Hey, welcome back. I'm really glad you're here tonight. Before we wander down these muddy streets of the past, maybe take a moment, breathe out whatever you've been holding in today. Hold that blanket up just right, feel it brush your skin. If you like, dim the lights a little more. Shadows are good company for stories like this. Can you hear the rain against the window? Or maybe it's just your own heartbeat, soft and steady, reminding you you're safe. Tonight, we're going to slip through time. We're leaving the safe glow of now and stepping into a world that was, well, not so gentle. Imagine rough cobblestones under your boots, a chill in the air that smells like smoke and damp straw. You and I just drifting through crooked alleys and candlelit doorways. No one knows we're here. No one but us. It's strange, isn't it? How some stories get tucked away, like they're too shameful to be remembered. But shame has never really stopped people from doing what they do best, surviving. And that's what tonight is about. How women, girls really, found a way to stay alive in a world that didn't much care if they did. Imagine, it's midnight in a small medieval town. Doesn't matter which one. They all smelled the same. Wood smoke from a distant hearth, the sour tang of spilled ale, something sweet that clings to your nose, like rotting fruit in the gutter. Picture this, a lone lantern swaying in the wind, its flame dancing behind thin, oiled parchment. You can hear boots squelching through mud, thick, sticky, clinging to the hem of a wool skirt that was never quite warm enough. And here, under that swinging sign, a crooked door just cracked open. Inside, it's warmer, but not by much. A fire burns low in a stone hearth. There's laughter, but it's not the warm, bright kind. More like a drunk man's bark, half mean, half sad. A girl leans against the doorframe. Her name, tonight, might be Alice. It could be Joan or Marjorie. Names mattered, but not always. Not when you sold your name every night for a coin or two. Alice pulls her cloak tighter. You see her breath mist when she exhales. Did you know medieval winters were sometimes called the hungry months? Because you could almost hear your own bones creak with emptiness. So you'd stand in a doorway, smile at men who smelled like stale wine and old cheese, and hope tonight someone would pay enough to fill your belly for another day. Have you ever wondered what that kind of cold does to a person? It makes your feet ache. It makes your hope thin out like the frost on a window at dawn. But somehow, Alice still stands there, shifting her weight from one foot to the other, eyes flicking up and down the street, pretending she's not terrified. She learned young, if you flinch, they notice, and you never wanted to be noticed for the wrong thing. Close your eyes for a second. Picture the inside of her cloak. Tucked into the lining is a tiny scrap of lavender. Dried, nearly scentless now. She presses it to her nose when the smell of unwashed bodies and cheap ale makes her gag. It's a tiny thing, but it reminds her of summer, of the little patch of purple her mother once grew by the back wall. Alice keeps that memory hidden like treasure, just like you might tuck a warm thought under your pillow tonight. And in this darkness, you can almost hear it, the murmur of secrets traded in the shadows. Alice knows every alley, every door that swings open at the right knock. She knows which guard takes bribes and which will slap her for asking. She knows that the same man who buys her time tonight will walk past her tomorrow like she's filth stuck to his boot. But still, she survives. That's the word that hums under her breath as she counts the coins hidden in her bodice. Survive. Not live. Not dream. Just survive. Funny, isn't it? How survival can be brutal and beautiful all at once. If you listen closely, you might hear Alice humming to herself, an old lullaby her mother used to sing when the nights were less cruel. She doesn't remember all the words, but the tune helps. It's the same for you, maybe. A warm voice, a soft story, something to keep the cold outside. So here we are, you and me, standing with Alice in the damp glow of a flickering lantern. There's a whole night ahead of us. rooms to peek into, secrets to overhear, laughter that hides more sadness than you'd guess. Don't worry, we'll go gently. No one will see us. We're just shadows in the dark, remembering what no one wanted us to remember. Stay with me. Keep your eyes half closed if you like. Feel how the weight of the blankets presses down on you, soft and safe. We'll drift deeper soon, through brothels and churches, cold stone corridors, and secret chambers. But for now, just breathe. In, out. Hear Alice's footsteps on the cobblestones. She's waiting for you, just around the corner. And so our story begins. Next, let's wander a little farther down these crooked streets, shall we? You've got your blanket tucked around you, your mind drifting just enough to feel the chill of the cobblestones under your boots, or maybe you're barefoot in this dream. I like to think you're walking softly, careful not to splash through the muddy puddles pooling under sagging roofs. Picture this. It's sometime past midnight now. Most of the good townsfolk are asleep or pretending to be. But the town itself isn't sleeping, not really. There's always something alive in the corners. The scrape of a rat's claw against a wooden beam, a cough echoing out of a crooked doorway, a whisper that's half a bargain and half a threat. Look up. See how the lanterns swing gently on rusted iron hooks? Their glow doesn't reach far, just enough to make the shadows feel thicker than they really are. Imagine the smell, wet stone, soot from a dozen chimneys, a hint of boiled cabbage drifting from someone's hearth. The wind snakes through the alleys, carrying every scent and every secret. Here, pressed against the side of a timbered house that leans like it's had too much ale, you spot her. Alice again, or maybe someone else tonight. She's not alone. A cluster of girls, hardly more than silhouettes under their cloaks, murmur to one another in voices so soft they're almost carried away by the breeze. They stand just outside the pool of lantern light, invisible but waiting, always waiting. Can you see the way they watch the street? Every footstep, every flicker of a figure rounding the corner is a promise or a threat. A drunk merchant stumbling back from the tavern might mean a silver coin if he's lonely enough, desperate enough. But he might mean a bruised lip too, or worse. It's a dangerous game, this corner trade. Sometimes the town guard will turn the corner, boots sloshing through the muck. They might take their cut, a handful of coins pressed into a glove palm. Or they might take something else, payment in kind, rough and quick in an alley while the other girls look away. You'd think the corners would be quieter in winter, but hunger doesn't hibernate. It prowls, it scratches at your belly. It makes your hands tremble as you reach for a stranger's cloak. The girls whisper about a madam who keeps her girls inside, warm by the fire. But that warm place takes half their coin, and for some, even the warmth is too expensive. Now listen closely. Over there, by the tavern's crooked sign, a couple argues under their breath. She swears she'll never come back to this corner again. He calls her a liar, but tomorrow night, they'll both be here weaving the same dance. Somewhere in the shadows, an old woman with no teeth watches it all. No one knows her name anymore. They call her Hag, which old crone, but she once stood where Alice stands now. She hums a song no one remembers the words to, rocking on her heels, and if you drop a penny in her lap, she'll spit on it for luck. Funny, the things people believe when hope is thin. Picture a young man, barely a man, really. He leans against a stone wall, arms folded, eyes darting from girl to girl. Some say he's their protector. Others say he's just another vulture, waiting to claim his share when the coins change hands. He whistles under his breath, a tune that doesn't sound happy, but keeps him company. Imagine the way the girls tuck their hair under linen caps, try to look older, more worldly. The truth is, many of them aren't much older than children. But here, on the shady corners, innocence isn't worth much It's just another thing to be sold, if the buyer wants it enough. A stray dog noses through a heap of cabbage leaves, its ribs showing through matted fur. It pauses near the girls, hoping for a scrap, something to chew on. One of them crouches down, pulls a crust of bread from her pocket. Last night's supper, forgotten or saved. She tosses it to the dog, who gulps it down and disappears into the dark. Little kindnesses even here. Funny how life clings to these forgotten corners. Life in all its grimy, desperate shapes. If you stand very still, you can feel the heartbeat of the street, the muffled moans behind shuttered windows, the sharp bark of laughter, the sigh of the wind winding its way between stone walls. Alice shifts her weight again, cold seeping through the thin soles of her shoes. She tries to imagine her feet warming near a fire, her belly full of something richer than watered-down ale. She imagines a husband, sometimes a kind face, a pair of strong hands that never strike. But that dream feels as distant as the stars peeking through the cloud cover above the alley. And you're still here beside her, invisible in the dark. No need to shiver. The corner can't touch you, but you can feel it, can't you? The fear, the small sparks of hope, the bargains struck with eyes half closed. So, when you lie back tonight and your blankets press warm around you, remember these corners. Remember the soft shuffle of feet on muddy stones, the hush of girls whose names slip away into the dark, their stories buried in the shadows, waiting for someone, like you, to listen. Stay close. There's more to see deeper inside the town. Alice has secrets to share. Secrets she'll whisper in your ear if you promise not to turn away. We'll go together next time. Sleep easy, the corners will keep. Next, let's lean in a little closer. You've got the feel of the shady corners now. The dripping eaves, the breath that clouds the cold air, the hush of whispered deals. But a story like this isn't just shadows and lantern light. It needs a heartbeat. It needs a name you can hold on to in the dark. So tonight, that name is Alice. Not a queen or a saint. Just Alice. No last name worth remembering. No family crest to carve above a door. Just her. Thin ankles wrapped in worn wool. A mouth that tries to smile even when it trembles, and eyes that dart from door to door like a mouse sniffing out scraps. Picture this. The morning before the corner, before the hush of the street. Imagine waking up where Alice does. It's a loft above the alehouse kitchen, the ceiling so low she can barely sit up straight. The straw mattress stinks of sweat, spilled broth, and something she tries not to name. Mice have made a nest near the firewood pile, and she can hear them scratch as she rubs sleep from her eyes. She shivers, not just from the cold, but from the ache that never quite leaves her bones. A bruise blooms dark and yellow on her thigh, a reminder of a man who didn't like to hear the word no. But bruises fade. Coins don't come back once they're spent. Alice pulls on her only dress, coarse with the color of ditch water. She shakes out the wrinkles, flinches when a fleece scurries over her collarbone, then pinches it dead between her fingernails. That's the thing about Alice. You might think she's fragile, but watch her move. The way she ties a strip of linen around her hair, the way she wipes last night's coal from her lashes, the way she hums to herself while dipping a rag into a cracked clay bowl to splash her face. You see, she survived winters colder than this. She survived men crueler than this town's filthiest corner. And somehow, when she presses that scrap of lavender to her nose, she still remembers her mother's voice. Alice's mother. Was she a good woman? Perhaps. Or perhaps she left too soon, slipping away under a blanket, bones sharp as needles when the hunger took her. Alice was old enough to remember the smell of her hair, but not old enough to remember her voice clearly. Funny how the memory fades, even as the hunger stays. Imagine her stepping down the crooked stairs, her feet bare against cold stone. The kitchen smells of stale broth, yesterday's bread, and ashes. The old innkeeper nods at her, but doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. He knows where she goes at night. Knows, too, that the copper coins she leaves on the shelf pay for more than the straw mattress. And so Alice slips out into the street again. Dawn this time, the sky bruised purple where it meets the roofs. She tries to sell flowers by the churchyard gate. Sad little posies of wilted daisies and withered rosemary, stolen from the back garden of a merchant's wife who'll never miss them. Some days she earns enough for a stale heel of bread. Other days, the flowers wilt in her lap, and she drifts back to the corner when night comes, empty-handed. Picture her perched on a low stone wall by the church. She watches boys run past, chasing each other with sticks, their laughter sharp in the cold air. She wonders, just for a moment, what it might feel like to be one of them, to laugh, to be chased, to have someone waiting at the door with hot soup and a ruffle blanket by the hearth. But that isn't her story. So she tucks the thought away, like she tucks the lavender in her bodice, and she waits for the night. Waits for the men whose coins smell of iron and stale sweat. Waits for the bruises that come with every bargain. Waits for the next morning when she'll wake up again in the same straw bed and do it all over. You see, Alice isn't a legend. She's not a heroine in a ballad sung by firelight. She's not the clever girl who tricks the king and rides away on a white horse. She's just Alice, a name and a face in the dark, standing in the corner while the rest of the town pretends not to see her. And yet, isn't there something powerful in that? In the way she still hums under her breath. In the way she still dreams. Foolish, small dreams, but dreams all the same. A loaf of warm bread. A patch of lavender growing by her window. A pair of hands that touch her with care, not claim her like a coin. So tonight, as you breathe slower, wrapped up warm in your safe place, remember Alice. Hold her name in your mind like a little candle flickering against the draft. Alice, the girl who stands where no one wants to look, who survives where no one wants to linger. She'll be waiting for you at the corner again, because the night is long and the stories don't end just because the lanterns go out. Close your eyes. Rest here a while. We'll follow her footsteps deeper into the shadows soon. For now, just breathe. A name and a face. Alice. Meanwhile, the corner fades behind you, the cold creeping only so far before the promise of firelight draws you in. It's funny, really, how a place can be both a haven and a trap. A crooked doorway that swallows up girls like Alice and spits them out with just enough coins to come crawling back. Tonight, we're stepping through one of those doors. Picture it. The sign above your head swings in the wind. A crude painting of a rose, though some call it the rose and thorn. The door creaks open when you lean against it, wood swollen from years of damp fog and drunken fists pounding for entry. Inside, the air wraps around you like a too warm blanket, heavy with the tang of sour ale, old smoke, sweat, and something sweeter that clings to the edges like cheap perfume dabbed on wrists that still remember lavender fields. The floorboards are slick with spilled drink and mud. Your boots stick a little as you step across the threshold, the noise inside pressing against your ears like a secret that can't be kept quiet. A fire crackles low in the stone hearth, its embers spitting up tiny sparks that float for a moment before dying in the darkness above the rafters. In a corner, a knot of men crowd around a wooden table scarred with knife marks and old candle drips. They shout over each other, mugs raised, eyes glassy. Laughter spills out, too loud, too raw. It's not the kind of laughter that lifts you. It drags you down like boots through the mud outside. And there, drifting between the tables, skirts brushing against coarse trousers, is Alice. Or maybe it's not Alice tonight. Maybe it's a girl with hair dark as the shadows behind the bar, or one with freckles sprinkled across her collarbone like spilled salt. Does it matter? The names change, the faces blur, but the story stays the same. She leans down to whisper in a customer's ear, lips almost brushing the filthy stubble on his cheek. He smells like pickled onions and stale sweat. She pretends not to mind. He laughs, spills a bit of ale down her sleeve, and tries to slip his hand up her skirt right there by the hearth. She pulls away, smile painted on her mouth like a cracked mask. There are private rooms for that. Even in this world, there are rules, soft ones, easily bent, but rules all the same. Behind the bar stands the madam, broad-shouldered, eyes sharp as a butcher's knife. She watches the room like a hawk circling a field of rabbits. Every coin passes through her hands before it makes its way to the girl's pockets. Minus her share, of course, and the innkeeper's cut and the constable's hush money. Funny how survival is never free. Not here. Now, let your eyes wander up the narrow stairs at the back. Each step creaks under a different pair of boots each night. Picture the hallway above, dark, narrow, the walls pressed and tight. Behind each door, a candle flickers, shadows dance. You might hear a giggle muffled by a rough hand, or the creak of a bed that's seen too much for one lifetime, or nothing at all. Silence could be the heaviest sound of all in a place like this. Imagine Alice leading a man up those stairs. She counts the steps, 12 to the top, 3 to her door. Her bare feet slip on the worn wood. She knows which floorboards squeak, which to avoid when she wants to leave without waking the madam. Inside the room, the bed is little more than a sagging pallet stuffed with straw. The blanket, if you can call it that, is scratchy wool that still smells of the last man who lay under it. She lights a stub of tallow candle, its flame guttering in the draft. The man doesn't bother with sweet words. They never do. His breath hits her face, sour with ale. She turns her head just slightly, eyes fixed on the cracked wall, the flickering flame. If she stares at the candle, she can pretend for a heartbeat or two that it's a hearth fire in her own home, a place that doesn't exist anywhere but behind her closed eyes. Sometimes, if she's lucky, the man is too drunk to last long. Sometimes he falls asleep with his boots still on, snores rattling the walls while she slips from under him, collects her coins from the table, counts them twice to be sure. She'll pull on her skirt, pat down her hair, wipe her hands on the blanket, and tiptoe barefoot down the stairs, back into the noise, the smoke, the music that someone tries to play on a battered lute near the door. Meanwhile, the alehouse downstairs hums like a beehive. A brawl breaks out near the hearth. A man accusing another of cheating at dice. A mug crashes to the floor, foam spreading like dirty snow. The madam doesn't flinch. She knows when to step in and when to let men bleed their anger into each other instead of her girls. Back behind the bar, a small shelf holds battered candles, a cracked jug of watered-down wine, and a ledger, thick with debts and promises scribbled in clumsy marks. Names, dates, payments owed. Secrets that could ruin more than one well-dressed customer if they slipped into the wrong hands. And sometimes they do. Secrets are worth more than flesh in the end. Now listen, a soft knock at the back door. A girl slips out into the alley behind the alehouse. She trades a few quick kisses with a passing guard, slips a silver coin into his palm. It's not just for her safety. It's for the safety of all the girls inside. One coin can mean the difference between a raid at dawn and another quiet night under the swinging rose sign. Picture Alice again, her back against the rough plaster wall at the foot of the stairs. She closes her eyes for a moment, lets the hum of voices wash over her. Her feet ache. Her head swims from the smell of sweat and ale. She rubs her thumb over the scrap of lavender hidden in her sleeve. A tiny ritual, a sliver of softness in a place where softness is dangerous. Funny how a brothel can feel like shelter. Out on the corners, you're alone, just you and the wind, the eyes that follow, the fists that find you if you're unlucky. In here, at least, there's a roof, a hearth, someone to watch your back, if only because you make her richer every time you climb those stairs. And when the candles finally burn down, when the last drunk staggers into the dawn, Alice will curl up on that straw pallet, the scratches and bruises fresh on her skin. She'll drift off to the sound of the fire hissing out, a lullaby of embers and the distant echo of a lute with one string out of tune. Some nights, that's enough. Enough to wake up and do it all again. Enough to keep the corners at bay for a few hours more. So, as you lie there, warm, safe, your own sheets soft against your skin, spare a thought for the creaking stairs, the flickering candles, the whispered promises that dissolve like smoke at dawn. Alice is still up there somewhere, counting coins she'll spend before the next full moon, still humming under her breath, still surviving. Sleep now, if you can. We'll drift deeper soon, through the crooked corridors of the church, where sins are hidden and forgiven, or not, behind stone walls. But for now, listen to the last echo of laughter by the hearth. Feel the warmth slip through your fingers, and let the night hold you, just like it holds Alice. But here's the curious part. You'd think a place like this, the Rose and Thorn, or whatever they call it tonight, will be cursed by every priest in town, every bishop, every tight-lipped nun muttering her prayers behind cold convent walls. And yet, isn't it funny how the same stone tower that tolls the hour for confession can stand just down the road from the busiest brothel in town? Picture this: the church bells pealing out at dawn, echoing down muddy streets. The same muddy streets where girls like Alice lean against tavern doors, skirts hitched just so, eyes half shut against the wind. By daylight, the priest will stand at his pulpit, voice rolling through the nave like thunder wrapped in silk. He'll wag a finger, sin, sin, sin. He'll remind the townsfolk to keep their daughters pure and their beds cold. But once the candles gutter low, the doors swing on their iron hinges just the same. Confession, my child? Oh, we have time for that. But first a tithe. First, a coin slipped into the trembling palm of the very same holy man who curses the brothel by day. Imagine stepping inside the church at dusk, just after the last hymn. It's beautiful in that cold, breathless way only old stone can be. The air tastes of beeswax and incense, cloying and sweet enough to coat your tongue. Candles flicker on iron stands, throwing shadows across stained glass that traps saints and martyrs forever in their frozen poses. And there, in the side chapel, the priest sits, his robes heavy with gold thread, a ring flashing on his finger as he turns the pages of an account book. Not a Bible, mind you, an account book. Neat lines of debts owed, indulgences sold, fines collected from sinners who can't keep their hands to themselves. You might think he's different, cleaner, better than the men who shuffle into Alice's corner at midnight. But watch him lean in when the madam from the Rose and Thorn slips through the chapel door. Her hood drawn low, but her eyes bright with that sly, sharp glint you only earn by crawling through 100 nights of survival. They whisper in the hush of the church, a hush so thick you can almost hear the secrets sliding over the stones. She presses a coin into his hand. He nods. No raids this week. No public scolding from the pulpit about fallen women defiling our righteous town. In return, the priest keeps his mouth shut, the guards keep their distance, and the town keeps pretending it's better than it is. Now, think of Alice. Imagine her kneeling on the cold flagstone floor, her hands folded tight, her head bowed. She mumbles the words of confession, mouth dry with fear she can't quite name. Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. She can feel his eyes on her scalp, the heat of his judgment, and something else. Something that makes her stomach twist more than any stranger's touch. When she's finished, he tells her to pray, to mend her ways, to stay away from temptation, though he knows temptation is the only thing that keeps her alive. Sometimes he'll slip her a crust of bread, a copper coin that barely warms her palm. Sometimes he'll tug her wrist when no one's watching, pull her into the shadows behind the choir stalls. There, the candles can't see, and neither can the saints staring down from their stained glass prisons. And afterwards, she'll stumble back into the street, clutching that same copper coin, wondering if her soul weighs less than a crust of bread. Meanwhile, the bishop's manor glows like a beacon on the edge of town. High walls, locked gates, a garden blooming behind stone. Flowers Alice could never steal, no matter how brave she is in the dark. Inside, the bishop dines on roasted capon, his hands soft, his belly round with other people's sins. He knows about the brothels. Of course he does. They pay him rent, hidden behind layers of parchment and polite silence. No need to dirty his hands when the madams come calling, doffing their hoods like courtiers before a king. Picture the scribes, pale boys with ink-stained fingers, scratching out each new entry in the ledgers. They tally the coins, count the hush money. The bishop hums along with the choir drifting up from the nave below, his voice warm and sweet. He imagines himself holy, righteous, untouchable. But the streets know better. The corners whisper it. The brothel girls know the bishop's favorite wine, the priest's secret weakness for soft skin in dark places. They know that if you push too hard, if you name the wrong name too loud, the same men who bless your forehead with holy oil will turn you out in the rain without a crumb of bread to swallow. Funny, isn't it? The line between salvation and sin, drawn in chalk, blurred with the sweep of a skirt, washed away by the next downpour. And you, lying there in your warm bed, you feel the weight of that stone chapel, don't you? The cold flagstones under your knees, the scent of incense clinging to your hair, the hush of the saints who never look away, no matter what you whisper in the dark. Alice walks out of that church when dawn comes, lighter by one secret, heavier by one more bruise on her soul. She pulls her cloak tight around her shoulders, steps into the puddle that pools near the chapel door, and reminds herself, survive. That's all there is, survive. So tonight, as your eyes grow heavy and the candle at your bedside burns low, remember how the holy and the broken share the same streets. How confessions can be sold just like flesh. And how, somehow, the girls still stand in the corners when the bells toll again. Rest your head. We're not done yet. Oh no. Next, we'll slip into the smells and itches that never quite wash away. A world of fleas, filth, and desperate perfume. But for now, feel the hush of the chapel, the cold stone pressing against your skin, the faint scent of beeswax and secrets. Sleep. Alice will be waiting in the shadows. Let's get closer. Lean in. No one else needs to hear this part. Because the smell of survival is never clean, no matter what the bishop pretends, no matter how the church bells try to drown it out at dawn. No, the truth sticks to skin, slips under fingernails, burrows in hair that never quite loses the itch. Picture Alice again. She's back in the corner of her loft above the alehouse kitchen, the straw mattress pressing dampness against her back, the lice nibbling at the soft place behind her ear. It doesn't matter how often she boils her dress in that battered copper pot downstairs. The fleas always come back. Always. They crawl through seams, hitch rides on the hems of cloaks, nestling in the folds of every rough wool blanket shared by a dozen bodies. Can you feel it? That ghost itch at the base of your neck, the one that makes you scratch even though you know you're safe. But she's never safe from it. When she lies down after a night in the brothel, her hair tangled with sweat, her skin sticky with other people's breath, she combs her scalp with a bone comb she bought for 2 precious pennies. It cracks when she presses too hard, but it's worth it just to pull the tiny black specks away, to squash them between her fingernails, to feel a little less like the filth is winning. And yet, Alice knows how to hide the smell of the corners. It's an art, a ritual stitched into every girl's dawn. Imagine her dipping a rag into a chipped clay bowl, mixing rainwater with rosemary if she's lucky, or just vinegar if that's all the madam will spare. She scrubs her armpits, her thighs, her neck, not because it truly cleans her, but because it masks what no soap can erase: the rank sweetness of men's sweat, the sour tang of unwashed bodies grinding against each other in the dark. Sometimes, on market days, a traveling peddler brings tiny vials from far-off places, amber glass stoppered with wax, holding precious droplets of rosewater or lavender oil. Alice stands at a stall, eyes wide, nose twitching at the hint of something beautiful. She trades 2 bruised apples and a half-broken wooden spoon for a vial the size of her thumb. For a whole week, she dabs it behind her ears before slipping out to the corner, a tiny shield against the world's filth. A lie she tells her own nose so she can stand a little taller when a man draw close. Picture this. She's in the brothel now, the hearth smoke heavy with spit-roasted meat and spilled ale. Alice slides past a drunk guard, his eyes glassy as he grabs for her wrist. She leans in, smiles, lets him catch the faint whiff of lavender oil. He snorts, "Let's go," and staggers away. Sometimes the right smell is worth more than the sharpest dagger. But here's the part no one writes in the holy books. Survival is always a compromise. Alice knows how the fleas will come back tonight, slipping under her skirts while she sleeps. She knows how the wool blanket will hold onto the scent of every man who's paid for her smile. The rough fingers, the dirty boots left by the pallet, the breath that sours the air she pretends to swallow without flinching. Yet, every girl has her tricks. Some chew mint, leaves to sweeten their breath, their teeth stained green by morning. Some sew sachets of dried rosemary and thyme into their sleeves. A little herbal armor pressed to her wrist when a man leans too close. The madam burns sweet wood in the hearth sometimes. Pine, if she can get it, trying to chase the stink of bodies into the rafters where the smoke curls and sleeps. Now, imagine the cold nights when the filth feels heavier than the blanket. Alice curls her knees up, tucks her hands into her armpits to feel her own warmth. Her fingers smell of old ale and lavender oil. She wonders which one will cling longer, the sweetness or the sour. She hums a lullaby her mother used to sing, half-forgotten words that taste like summer fields she's almost sure she dreamed up. Outside, the rats scurry into the floorboards. They carry fleas too. The girls hear the scratching, feel the prickle on their calves when they step down at dawn to wash their skirts in icy water. One girl tries to catch the rats. She ties bits of salted pork rind to a bent nail and waits. She says if she catches enough, she'll sell the fur for pennies. It never works. The rats are cleverer than she is. The fleas win every time. And you, lying there now, warm, your skin soft under clean sheets. You can almost smell it, can't you? That sour-sweet blend of sweat, smoke, stale ale, and the ghost of something better. Lavender, maybe, or rosewater that faded days ago. It clings to the girls like a second skin, the only armor they can afford. So next time you touch the bottle of perfume on your dresser, next time you breathe in something that makes you close your eyes and smile, think of Alice, pressing a drop of lavender oil to her pulse point with trembling fingers, praying it will hold back the filth just long enough for her to feel human. Just long enough to fool herself that she is something more than the crawling things that live in her straw bed. Funny, isn't it? how survival smells. Not like hope, but like lies, half-truths, and the faint sweetness of something you can't quite hold on to. Close your eyes now. Scratch that phantom itch on your neck, if you must. Feel the heavy warmth of your blankets pressing down, keeping the filth outside your dreams. Alice is there, somewhere in the shadows, combing her hair with that cracked bone comb, humming softly to drown out the scratch and crawl. We're not done yet. Oh, not yet. Soon, we'll stand with her in the marketplace, beneath the whips and the stocks, the punishments that wait when the church's wink becomes a snarl. But for now, let the scent of lavender linger in your mind. Breathe deep and let the fleas stay in the past where they belong. Sleep for now. Next comes the brutal part. As if hunger and fleas and the stink of sour ale weren't punishment enough. There were days when the corner, the brothel, the church's hush money, none of it could shield a girl like Alice from the raw bite of public shame. Picture this, dawn breaking gray and low over a cobbled town square. The church bell tolls, not the gentle summons to mass, but the heavy clang that calls every curious soul from behind shuttered windows. Boots crunch over frost-bitten stones. Wooden clogs clatter as people gather. Housewives with baskets half-packed, children tugging at sleeves, old men leaning on canes for balance as they crane their necks to see who it'll be this time. In the center of the square stands the whipping post, a rough-hewn beam of oak, darker in some places where blood once dried and was scrubbed off by cold rain. Beside it, a constable paces, boots heavy, breath fogging the air. In his hand, a lash coiled like a snake waiting for someone foolish enough to move too slow. And there's Alice, or someone just like her. It doesn't matter whose name they spit today. A girl who stood in the wrong alley, sold a smile to the wrong man, made the wrong wife jealous enough to whisper in the pre-seer. Or maybe she simply owed the madam too much silver, didn't pay the guard his hush money, too many coins that never changed hands. Imagine her skirts hiked up around her knees, her arms tied to the posts so tight the rope bites skin raw. Her hair, brushed neat just last night, now matted, tangled around her face. She feels the eyes on her, hundreds of them, each gaze like a stone thrown soft enough to bruise, hard enough to break a piece of her that won't grow back. The constable calls out her crime, whoring in the alleys, tempting good men from their homes. The crowd titters. Good men, they echo like they don't all know half of them slip coins into girls' palms when the moon's a sliver in the sky. Funny how the world likes to watch a woman pay for what it quietly enjoys in secret. The first strike lands with a snap that echoes through the square. You'd think the sound would be muffled by all those bodies pressed close, but it rings out clean and cruel. Alice flinches, her knees buckling, but the rope holds her up. Blood beads up in thin lines, trickles down her spine, disappears into the worn fabric at her waist. A woman in the front row, a fishmonger's wife with arms thick as barrels, crosses herself and mutters a prayer. She'll sell her husband's catch tonight, hush him when he comes home stinking of wine and someone else's perfume. But for now, she stands tall, proud that she's not the one tied to that post. Children laugh. Children always do. They point, whisper, ask questions their mothers hush with pinched fingers and quick, angry looks. But they'll remember. They always do. Some nights, years from now, when they press a coin into a girl's hand under a lantern's soft glow, they'll remember the sight of Alice, or Joan, or Marjorie, or whoever bled for them that morning. And they'll pretend it was different. By the time the lashes stop, her back is striped raw, welts rising like ridges on a dry field. Her legs tremble, her breath catches in hiccup gasps that sting her throat worse than the rope burns around her wrists. When they cut her loose, she sinks to the frozen ground. No one rushes to help her. Mercy isn't free here. Not in the square, not at the post. She curls around herself like a dog in the snow, her skirts dirty with mud and blood, her hair falling over her eyes. For a moment, you'd almost think she's dead, but survival is stubborn. It beats just under her ribs like a dull drum, reminding her there's no peace in the dirt. Later, when the square empties out and the gossip drifts home with baskets on hips and lips that can't stop repeating her name, she'll drag herself to the alley behind the rose and thorn. The madam might toss her a crust of bread, a cracked jug of vinegar to wash the cuts before they rot. She'll hiss when the sting hits raw flesh, but better that than the fever. And tomorrow night, if she can stand, she'll go back to her corner. Back to the same boots crunching over the same stones. Back to the same men who watched her back break against the post and said nothing. And who will say nothing again when they slip her a copper and pull her into the shadows. Picture this. The moon rising above the square, now empty except for the stains no rain can quite wash away. The post stands crooked, the rope still swinging a little in the breeze. A ghost of her pain lingering in the knots. Funny, isn't it? How shame can be a public thing, shouted into daylight, while survival, the quiet part, happens in the hush of back rooms and candlelit corners. And you, warm under your blanket, your back untouched by rope or lash, can almost feel that chill, can't you? That ache, that hum in the bones that says you'd do anything to stay alive. Anything at all. Alice will stand again. She always does. She hums the same half-forgotten lullaby, her voice thin but stubborn as dawn creeps back over the rooftops. So tonight, let your eyes close knowing the post is far away, the rope undone, the square empty except for the echo of footsteps fading into sleep. Next, we'll slip through a hidden door, down into the secret rooms where the real bargains are struck. But for now, rest. No ropes, no lash, just the sound of the wind brushing your window and the steady beat of your heart reminding you you're safe. Picture this. The streets are quiet now. The town square swept clean, the last gossip drifting off under a shawl. The whipping post left a creak in the wind like a ghost of what everyone saw but no one will admit to. Alice leans against the inn's back wall, bruises under her cloak, the cold biting through the fabric. And in that moment, she does what any girl like her must do when the hunger hums under every heartbeat. She slips into the shadows, searching for a door that doesn't swing wide for just anyone. Because while the street corners catch the drunks and the fools, the hidden rooms, they catch the men with something to lose. The merchant who boasts of a virtuous wife and well-fed sons. The alderman who prays loudest at Mass, but trembles at the thought of his secrets seeping out like blood from a fresh cut. There's an alley behind a rose and thorn, crooked as a witch's finger. At the end of it, under a slumped archway half-choked with moss, a door waits. It doesn't look like much, just warped wood, iron hinges rusted brown. But knock twice, pause, knock once more, and it opens with a sigh that sounds almost human. Inside, you feel it at once, the hush. The way the damp night air slips off your shoulders, replaced by warmth that clings like breath to your skin. A tangle of candle smoke and sweet wine curls in the low ceiling rafters. The floorboards are covered in old carpets, so your boots don't creak. No one wants creaks here. Not when secrets cost more than flesh. Picture the man who sits near the door, the one with the pockmarked cheek and the knife tucked into his boot. His job is simple. Letting the ones who pay enough to deserve a place in the dark. He doesn't smile. He barely blinks. But his eyes flick to the pouch on your belt, the gold you finger nervously as you wait for him to grunt you through. Alice comes here sometimes when the corners are too dangerous, when a madam's cut has taken too much, when her back still stings from the whip. In these hidden rooms, she trades the filth for something softer, at least for a few hours. She trades her body for silence, for warmth, for a man who slips a gold coin under her pillow and forgets his wedding vows for the night. Imagine the corridor that slopes downward, the air thick with the warmth of too many candles burning all at once. You can smell it, tallow and beeswax, smoke that coats your tongue when you breathe. Laughter hums from behind thick curtains, low and muffled, tangled with the creak of beds that never quite go silent. Alice steps through one of these curtains now. The red one, tore at the hem, but heavy enough to block out the rest of the world. Inside, the room is small, just a straw mattress covered by a wool blanket softer than anything she owns herself. A jug of watered wine on a stool. A candle stub flickering near a brass basin half filled with rose petals someone floated on the water to sweeten the air. The man waiting on the bed tonight is old enough to be her father. He smells of honey cakes and pipe smoke, not stale ale, not mud or fish guts or sweat-soaked leather. He smiles like he's telling himself he's not here for what he's here for. He talks too much at first about taxes and trade routes, and the wife who keeps the hearth warm but never his hands. Alice listens. She smiles when he jokes. She lets him press his lips to her palm as if he's kissing a saint's relic, not the raw, calloused hand of a girl who scrubbed too many floors and braced herself against too many rough walls. When he leaves, hours later, he tucks a gold coin into her palm, more than she'd earn in 3 nights at the post by the square. He doesn't look her in the eye as he goes. Men rarely do. Secrets are easier to carry when you pretend they never touched you. She sits a while in the hush that lingers after, runs her fingertips through the water in the basin, the rose petals drifting like tiny boats on an ocean she'll never cross. She presses one petal to her lips, breathing in that sweetness. One lie she lets herself believe for a heartbeat or two. Meanwhile, behind another curtain, a fight breaks out. 2 men, drunk on too much wine and too many promises. A guard slips in from the corridor. Not the town guard, no, but one loyal to the man at the door, the one with the knife in his boot. Here, there are rules. Don't bleed on the carpets, don't shout too loud, and never drag secrets into the daylight. Funny, isn't it? How these hidden rooms feel safer than the corners outside. Even with the knives, the hush, the smothering candle smoke. Because here, there's a lock on the door. Here, the men don't laugh at the bruises. They pretend they're gentle for an hour or two. And sometimes, that's enough. Alice slips the gold coin into her bodice. She pulls the curtain back, steps out into the corridor again, the warmth folding around her shoulders like a shawl. She knows the man at the door will nod as she passes. He knows every girl by name, every debt they carry, every coin they tuck away for a dream that might never grow into dawn. Outside, the alley waits, dark and damp, the stones slick with rain. The hidden room behind her hums with secrets that will never reach the ears of the bishop, the priest, the fishmonger's wife. Inside, men lie back on straw pallets, breathing in rose petals, exhaling their guilt into candle smoke. And can you feel it? That hush, that closeness, that tiny drop of warmth you'd cling to, too, if the street were waiting to chew your bones raw. So tonight, as you lie here, your door locked, your secret small and safe in the dark, think of Alice brushing her thumb over that gold coin, letting it glint in the guttering light for just a moment before she slips it deep into her cloak. Tomorrow, the corner will still be there. The lash will still hang behind the square. But for now, there's warmth behind a red curtain. Rest your eyes. Feel the hush gather around you like heavy drapes. Next, we'll drift into the shadows where disease sleeps, where the crawl of sickness is a secret no rose petal can hide. But for now, hush. Stay close. Stay warm. Meanwhile, while the hidden rooms promise warmth, while the rose petals drift in cracked basins and coins clink into hungry palms. Something else curls under the floorboards, behind the doors, something that doesn't care how many secrets you keep or how many prayers you whisper in the hush of candlelight. Picture this. Alice wakes before dawn. Her breath catches in her throat, raw, thick with a rattle she tries to swallow. She presses her hand to her chest, feels the slow bloom of heat there. Not the gentle heat of the hearth, but a crawling fever that starts under the skin and spreads like ink through water. She rolls on her side, the straw pallet creaking under her ribs. The itch at her scalp is nothing compared to this burn that won't wash away with rose water or vinegar. A cough bursts from her lips, raw enough to draw blood. She wipes away with the back of her hand, hoping no one sees. Because here's the cruel joke. No matter how carefully you dab lavender on your wrists, how many hidden rooms you slip into, how many guards you pay off, sickness always finds you. They call it the French disease, or the great pox, or if they're feeling cruel, just that filth whispered behind hands in the marketplace, behind curtains in the rectory. It travels from bed to bed on the backs of secrets. It slides under skirts and trousers, nests in the warmth of bodies pressed too close for too long. And once it takes root, well, there's no priest generous enough, no bishop rich enough, no mother's lullaby sweet enough to wash it away. Imagine Alice leaning over the basin. She splashes her face with cold water, watches a thin trickle of blood swirl through the rose petals, staining them pink. She tells herself it's nothing, just the chill in her bones from sleeping near the draft. Just a cough, just a sore that won't heal on her thigh, the flesh turning black at the edges like frostbite. She rubs vinegar on it, whispers an old prayer under her breath. Out on the corners, you hear the whispers before you see the truth. A girl who hasn't shown her face for days. Another who limps through the alley, eyes glazed, legs bandaged with ragged strips of linen. They say she has the French disease. They say it rots you from the inside, your bones aching like you're made of rotten wood. They say the sores come first, hidden under skirts, under sleeves, easy to pretend away when the coins are good enough. Funny, isn't it? How the same men who tie Alice to the post for selling her body will stand in the shadows, trousers undone, silver ready, never thinking for a moment that their coins carry a curse back to their wives, to the baby in the cradle, to the good bed under the clean sheets. And in the hidden rooms, the madam knows. Of course she does. She watches for the signs. The girl who sweats too much even in the dead chill of February. The girl who winces when she walks, whose skin blooms with ulcers she tries to cover with scraps of linen and the stale sweetness of rose oil. If she's smart, the madam sends them away before the good customers notice, pushes them out into the street where the corner girls stand like ghosts. No one wants to touch a girl who's rotting. No one wants to remember that the filth is already under their fingernails, lurking under their tongues. And Alice? She's smart enough to keep her sores hidden. She bites her tongue when the cough rips through her chest like claws. She wipes the blood from her lips, spits into the gutter before stepping back onto the swinging sign, the rose and thorn, smiling through cracked lips as if her breath doesn't taste of iron. Picture her now, pressed against the stone wall at the end of the alley. A drunk stumbles toward her, coins clinking in his purse. She knows the risk, knows she's passing the sickness on, knows she's breathing it into his mouth when he kisses her roughly against the wall. But what choice does she have? The sickness is slower than the hunger, and the hunger always wins first. They try remedies, sometimes foolish, desperate things. A slice of hot iron pressed to a sore. A wash of wine spiced with quicksilver that burns your throat raw, but promises to kill the rot. Prayers muttered over the wound. The priest's oily fingers pressing blessings in a skin already too far gone. None of it works. Not really. But here's the most brutal truth. Sometimes the disease saves them. Because a girl marked by the French disease is a girl no man wants to pay for. No constable wants to drag her to the post. No bishop wants her coins lining his coffers. So she fades into the shadows instead. She drifts out of the square, out of the brothel, out of the corners where the good wives watch through cracked shutters. She slips into the church graveyard at dusk, sits by the stone wall, picking at the sores on her legs, humming the same lullaby under her breath. Because even when your bones are rotting, a song still feels like hope. Alice knows how this ends. The cold will come. The cough will tear through her lungs until her breath rattles like dry seeds in a gourd. One morning, the madam will find her pallet empty. The corner will find another girl to stand in the shadows. The hidden rooms will close their curtains around a softer, newer voice. And you, tucked under your blankets, warm, your breath clear, your skin whole. You can almost taste it, can't you? The ghost of sickness that never quite died with the century. The quiet rot that creeps through dark alleys and secret rooms, patient as the grave. So tonight, breathe deep. Let the warmth of your bed remind you how soft the world can be when you're far from the cold corners, the lash, the crawling filth. And think of Alice, pressing rose petals to the split skin on her thigh, whispering the same word over and over like a spell. Survive, survive, survive. Next, we'll wander into something sweeter, or at least something that pretends to be. Because even in all that sickness and filth, sometimes a heartbeat stirs, a flicker of love, or something that wears its mask. But for now, rest your eyes. Let the shadows curl around your shoulders. Sleep. And yet, for all the filth, the lashes, the corners that swallow girls whole, sometimes, in the hush of a hidden room, in the warmth of a fire that's not quite bright enough to reach every bruise, there's a moment that feels like something else. Picture Alice. She's wrapped in a scratchy wool blanket, knees tucked to her chest, the coals on the hearth sighing their last glow into the damp air. Her breath rattles a little from that cough she pretends isn't there. But tonight she lets herself believe the lie that maybe it's just the cold. And across the room, a man snores. Not the drunk brawler with fists that bruise her ribs. Not the guard who slips her pennies with one hand and slaps her with the other. No, this one is different, or so she lets herself pretend. A merchant, maybe with soft boots and a voice like warm milk poured into a cracked cup. He stayed after the candle burned low. He didn't pull his cloak tight and stomp out into the rain. Instead, he reached for her hand, rough from laundry and stone walls, and pressed it to his cheek as if it were something holy. Imagine her fingers, trembling, tracing the lines at the corner of his eyes, the softness of his beard, the tickle of his breath when he murmurs half-dream words she'll never repeat. He tells her things she can almost believe, that he's not like the others, that he wants to take her away, out of the crooked alleys, past the whipping post, far from the rats scratching under the straw. A cottage, he promises, his voice thick with wine and wishful thinking. A bit of land where lavender grows wild. A warm fire, a good bed. No more corners. No more hidden rooms. Can you see her? How her eyes flutter shut when he says her name. Not the name she uses in the street, but her real name, the one she never gives away unless she's desperate for the lie. Alice. Just Alice. She almost lets herself drift into the dream. She pictures waking up to the smell of bread baking instead of sweat and stale ale. She pictures his boots by the door, not half kicked into a puddle, but lined up neat by a hearth that never goes cold. She wonders, just for a heartbeat, what her belly might look like, round and full with something other than hunger. But here's the cruel sweetness. It never lasts. Because when dawn comes, the merchant's boots find the floor. His coin purse jingles heavy, but not heavy enough to buy her freedom. He slips a silver piece under the pillow, presses a soft kiss to her temple, and whispers that he'll come back for her, that he'll send word, that she should wait. So she does. At first, she stands by the door after the coals die out, the blanket draped over her shoulders like the fur cloak she'll never own. She watches the alley for his hat bobbing above the crowd, the wide brim he tipped so charmingly when he told her she was too pretty for this place. Days pass, nights pass, the same guards, the same drunks, the same copper coins pressed in her palm, dirty and damp with sweat. No letter comes. No carriage rattles into the yard to take her away. The madam laughs behind her hand when she asks if anyone left word. The other girls roll their eyes, pinch her arm, tell her to stop being soft. Softness rots faster than any sore. And yet, in the hush of the darkest nights, when she's lying on her side on that straw pallet, her hair stuck to her cheek with sweat, she lets herself pretend. She closes her eyes and imagines the warmth of a bed that never smells of old ale. She pictures his fingers tracing the bones of her wrist, not to count the coins she owes, but just because they're hers. She hums the lullaby her mother once sang, the words fading, but the tune stubborn as frost. And for a moment, the world feels smaller, kinder. But when dawn creeps back in, pale and mocking, the lie shrivels up like an old apple left in the gutter. The boots stomp down the stairs again. The men come back, different faces but the same hunger. She pulls the blanket tighter, wipes her mouth with the corner of her sleeve, and smooths the tear streak from her cheek. Because Alice knows love isn't what keeps her alive. Love, or what wears its mask, is a story for the good wives and the merchant's household in the next parish over. For her, it's just another bargain, another sweetness that stings when it rots. Funny, isn't it? How the heart still beats out its useless drum, even when you beg it to hush. How the lie feels better than the truth, just for a night. So tonight, under your blankets, listen to your own heartbeat. Steady, patient. No secrets in the shadows. No boots thumping away at dawn. You're warm. You're whole. You don't have to sell the softest part of yourself to anyone. Alice will stand again tomorrow. A smile pressed on her cracked lips. A whisper in her ear that maybe the next one will keep his promise. She knows better, but the lie tastes sweet enough to keep her warm one more night. Next, we'll slip through the cracks where envy curls sharp and silent. The rivalries that bloom like weeds behind locked doors. But for now, let your eyes close. Feel your heartbeat settle under your palm. Love, or something like it, drifting through the hush. Sleep, my friend. Stay warm. Next, peek behind the curtains. Because even in places where the corners are cold and the hidden rooms hum with secrets, the real danger sometimes isn't the lash or the guard's boots, but the girl sleeping 2 pallets over, the one who hums the same lullaby when she thinks no one's listening. Picture the rose and thorn when the hearth's glow fades to embers. The customer's long gone, the coins counted, the floors sticky with spilled ale and candle drippings that never seem to scrape clean. Upstairs, behind the rough plastered walls, the girls nest like birds on narrow pallets pushed close enough to share whispers and sharpen them into knives. Alice lies awake sometimes, the straw crackling under her shoulder blades, her eyes tracing the cracks in the ceiling beams. She knows who's been skimming from the madam's purse. She knows which girl hides extra silver in the lining of her cloak, and who's sweet-talking the guard to look the other way when her hands slip into someone else's pocket. Imagine the hush of that room. A single candle stub guttering on the windowsill, the flame bowing low each time the wind rattles through the warped shutters. One girl turns over, her feet knocking Alice's shin. Another mutters in her sleep. A man's name, not the right one. There's a smell of old wine, sweat, cheap perfume clinging to the blanket they all share when the frost creeps under the door. They laugh together by day. You'd swear they were sisters the way they huddle under the eaves when the rain lashes the alley, passing a cracked mug of watered wine between their chapped lips. But when the lights fade, the laughter does too, because every corner has only so many coins to give. Every rich merchant who promises a better life picks just one hand to fill with silver and leaves the others clutching empty air. So the girls watch each other. Alice feels the eyes on her when she braids her hair by the hearth, smoothing the flyaways so she looks a little softer when the door creaks open for the next customer. She knows Marjorie, that red-haired girl with a bite in her voice, will stand right behind her, lips puckered like she's tasting something sour. Marjorie once poured lamp oil in another girl's wash basin, so they said, so her hair fell out in patches for weeks. No one saw her do it. No one ever sees. Rivalries bloom like weeds in the cracks, some sharp and sudden. A slap in the hallway when a customer chooses Alice's arm over another. Some slow and sickly sweet. Poison dripped word by word, a rumor here, a whisper there. He says she's riddled with sores. They say she's too soft. She'll rat you out to the madam. They say she keeps a dagger under her mattress. Careful where you sleep. One girl, a slip of a thing with milk blonde hair, swears she'll be the madam's favorite soon. She brags about the merchant who's promised to pay her debts, to buy her a room of her own above the main hall. She flits from bed to bed like a wasp, dropping stings in every ear. Alice hums her lullaby a little louder when she's near, as if to drown out the hiss of her poison. Sometimes, the rivalries flare into something sharper. A broken bottle left where bare feet stumble in the dark. A handful of fleas shaken out onto a clean blanket. Petty, cruel, but enough to keep a girl scratching for days while someone else smiles in her place at the corner. Funny, isn't it? How survival demands softness on the street, but steel behind the door. They stand side by side in the alley, backs to the cold wind, pretending to be sisters against the world, but every glance over a shoulder carries the question. If it's her or me, who will the night choose? And yet, for all the poison, all the pettiness, sometimes they laugh together still. A moment when the walls seem warmer, when the lice comb gets passed from hand to hand like a crown no one wants, but everyone needs. A scrap of bread shared in the hush before dawn, when the frost glitters on the window panes like tiny diamonds they'll never own. Alice curls tighter on her pallet, pressing her knees to her chest. She listens to the drip of rain from the leaky eave. She wonders which whisper will reach the madam first, who will trip over someone else's rumor and land face down in the gutter. It won't be her, she promises herself. She'll keep her head low, her secrets locked tight behind her teeth, her lullaby humming to drown out the envy scratching under every bed. And you, lying warm, your blankets clean, your door locked. You can almost hear them, can't you? The giggles that twist into snarls when the candle gutters out. The soft hush of petty revenge blooming behind closed eyes. The secrets traded like rotten apples no one wants, but everyone keeps passing along. So tonight, let your own secrets sleep easy. No rival at your shoulder. No footsteps creeping past your bed. Just you, the hush, the distant tap of rain against the window. Next, we'll drift forward to dawn again, into the pale blue hush of a morning after, when the warmth is gone, the rivalries are quiet, and the world looks for a moment like it might be gentle. But for now, close your eyes. Feel the hush settle in your bones. Let the rivalries fade behind the drape of sleep. Rest easy. Alice is humming you there. Picture this. The fire's gone out hours ago. The coals in the hearth whisper one last sigh into the cold air as dawn slips its pale fingers under the door. The corners are empty now, the alley hushed. No boots echoing, no coin pouches jingling, No drunken laughter to keep the door from pressing in too close. Alice stirs on her pallet. Her cheek sticks to the rough wool blanket, damp from her breath. She peels it away, feeling the straw crunch under her hip as she shifts. Her back aches. A dull hum where the lash marks, days old now, tug at the skin when she moves too quickly. She watches the ceiling first. It's low enough that in the gray dawn she can see every crack, every splinter in the beams that drip cold droplets onto the packed dirt floor when the frost melts. Above her, one of the other girls snores softly, mouth open to the chill. Another turns over, her feet knocking into Alice's shins, but neither of them bother to speak. Words are for the dark hours, when secrets slip like smoke between lips. Dawn demands silence. Picture the room. The stale perfume from a night before clings to the walls. Rose water gone sour, sweat, old candle tallow that crusts the windowsill. A single clay cup, cracked along the rim, sits by her palate, half filled with the dregs of watered wine, just enough to rinse the sour taste from her mouth when she rises. She pushes herself up, the blanket falling away from her shoulders. Cold air kisses the bruises on her arms, the tiny scabs she scratches absently at her thigh. No secrets in the morning. Everything shows in the light that slips through the broken shutter. The purple bloom of a mark, the raw pink of skin rubbed red by too many rough hands. She reaches for the chipped basin near the hearth. The water's icy, slick with a thin crust that cracks under her fingertips. She splashes her face, gasps as the chill stings her skin awake. A droplet slides from her chin, mixing with the ash on the stone floor. She scrubs under her nails, flecks of dirt, candle soot, a smear of blood she's not sure is hers. Behind her, the other girls wake too. Marjorie grumbles, stretching her arms like a cat, her hair a tangled halo of red against the drab gray dawn. One curses softly as she searches for her shoes, lost in the tangle of straw and rough-spun skirts. There's no laughter this time, no giggling about whose merchant snored the loudest or whose guard stumbled away without his boots. Morning after is too raw for that. Alice wraps her cloak tight around her shoulders. She digs under the straw near her pallet, pulls out a scrap of linen, yellow with age, the lavender sprig still sewn into the hem. She lifts it to her nose. The scent is almost gone, crushed under nights like last night. But it's enough, just enough to hush the rumble in her belly that reminds her she hasn't eaten since yesterday's bread crust. Downstairs, the brothel is hushed. The hearth is cold now, the ashes scattered by boots that never bothered to wipe the mud from their soles. A thin cat noses at a stale scrap of meat on the hearthstone, its ribs showing sharp through patchy fur. Alice crouches, flicks the bone closer, watches the cat drag it away under the rickety table. Funny how even the vermin get their share, if they're quick enough. She wipes her hands on her skirts, palms gritty with soot. The madam stands near the door, heavy keys jangling at her hip, ledger in hand. She glances up as the girls drift down the stairs, one by one, sleepy-eyed, bruised, lips chapped from words they didn't want to speak. Last night's coin, the madam says. No good morning, no blessing, just the tally neat and cold. Alice slips her hand into the pocket sewn inside her cloak. Fingers brush the silver coin the merchant left under her pillow. She lets herself hold it for one heartbeat, feels the way its cold edge bites her palm. Then she drops it into the tin dish on the table, the sound ringing too loud in the quiet hall. Half goes to the madam, half to the guard who keeps the law at bay. A sliver for the hearth's firewood, a crumb for the girl who earned it. She stands a moment longer, eyes on the door. Beyond that warped plank of wood, the street is waking. Boots sloshing through mud that never dries, shutters creaking open like sleepy eyes, The hiss of a kettle on a hearth where the air smells of something more than stale bodies. Bread maybe, or bacon, a smell she can almost taste on the back of her tongue. She doesn't linger too long on that. Dreams taste bitter after too many mornings after. She pulls her cloak tighter, tucks the lavender scrap back in her pocket. Her only sweetness, her only lie that tomorrow might smell better than today. The other girls drift past her. Marjorie gives her a look, half pity, half threat, the rivalry still simmering beneath the hush. No one speaks. They slip out the back door, one by one, like shadows that forget themselves when the sun climbs high enough. Outside, the morning breathes cold and wet. Alice steps into the mud. The frost crunches under her thin shoes, seeps into the cracks where leather has given up the fight. She lifts her chin. Somewhere, a church bell tolls, calling the good wives to prayer, reminding them to keep their husbands close when night falls again. She listens to it echo between the stone walls, catches her reflection in the oily puddle at her feet. A blur of cloak and hollow eyes. A ghost that still bleeds warmth when the coins are good enough. But not now. Now she's just Alice. Hunger in her belly, secrets on her skin, a lavender scrap pressed to her palm so she can remember she's still breathing. And you, there, warm under your blanket, toes tucked safe against the chill. You can almost feel that frost, can't you? The way it bites at ankles thin from too many dawns just like this. The way the hush of the morning after holds its breath, waiting for night to come round again. So close your eyes a moment. Taste the cold on your tongue, but feel the warmth at your back. No madam to count your coins. No thin cat fighting you for scraps. No ledger waiting for your name. Next, we'll drift into the lives of the ones who hold those keys. The madams, the keepers of the doors, the women too stubborn to die in the gutter. But for now, let the morning hush cradle you. Let the frost stay behind the walls. Sleep easy. Alice is stepping back into the street, and you're safe where you are. Meanwhile, when you stand at the corner, in the damp hush before dawn, you might think Alice runs her own fate, that the bruises and the bruised coins are all hers to gather and keep. But you'd be wrong. Always behind every creaking sign and candlelit door, there's someone stronger, sharper, hungrier in a way that doesn't look hungry at all. Picture her, the madam. They call her Mistress Rose, though her real name is something rougher, a name she buried years ago under layers of coin and secrets. She stands in the doorway of the Rose and Thorn just after the girls filed down the stairs, counting out the night's earnings in her thick, ring-covered fingers. Every silver piece clinks once, twice, before it disappears into the coffer at her hip. A purse so worn at the corners that its leather feels soft as skin. She isn't young anymore. Her hair is the color of dirty snow at the roadside come spring. But the streaks of silver only make her eyes sharper, two black stones glinting in a face carved by years of half-smiles and half-lies. Picture her standing by the hearth long after the last drunk has stumbled out. A pot of broth bubbles over the fire, not for the girls, but for her. A meal she eats with slow, careful bites, spoons scraping the clay bowl while she listens for whispers that drift down from the loft above. Mistress Rose knows every cough that rattles through the rafters. She knows when Marjorie slips an extra coin under her mattress instead of the tin dish. She knows when Alice hums that lullaby a little too softly in the dark, when a sore she hides on her thigh glows raw through torn wool. She knows because she was once Alice too. A corner girl with no shoes in winter, hair stuck to her cheek with spit and sweat, back striped raw by the constable's lash when the bishop decided the taxes had run thin. Funny how power grows in the cracks you scrape open for yourself. The day she realized her knife was worth more than her smile, she learned how to barter more than her skin. A secret here, a threat there, A name whispered into the right guard's ear. The same guard who now tugs his cap when he sees her on the street, too afraid to ask where the bruises on his wife's arms really came from. Mistress Rose keeps a ledger under her pillow. Not the one she lets the girls see. All neat columns of debts owed for skirts, for candles, for crusts of bread when the corner doesn't pay. No, this ledger is older, the pages soft with years of oil from her fingers, names scribbled in a careful hand. Who's paid protection money? Who's confessed things they'd rather bury? Which priest swore off the brothel in the pulpit, but bent his knee behind her locked door, sweat cooling on his collar as he begged her for more than forgiveness. In these pages, she's untouchable, or so she thinks. Sometimes, when the night grows too still, Mistress Rose slips her feet from her slippers, a pair of old leather shoes lined with rabbit fur, the only softness she's ever let herself keep, and sits by the tiny window in her loft. She watches the alley behind a rose and thorn. Rats nose through broken barrels, a cat hisses, and a drip of rain from the eaves sounds almost like the heartbeat of a town that's never slept kindly. She wonders in that hush how long she can hold this power tight to her chest. How long before some girl, cleverer, hungrier, pulls the secrets from under her pillow and drags them blinking into the day. Alice, maybe, or Marjorie, or the girl with the milk blonde hair who flashes sweet smiles and spits poison when a madam's back is turned. Picture this. The next morning, the guard slips through the kitchen door, his boots muddy, his eyes darting to the shadows. He hands Mistress Rose a paper, a name scribbled in a scrawl that makes her lips twitch into something like a smile. A girl who thought she could run. A girl who owes more than she'll ever have. Mistress Rose tucks the paper into her bodice, pats the guard's cheek like he's a child, and sends him away with a crust of bread and a lie to tell his wife. Because power isn't a fist or a blade. Not here. It's the hush that follows you down the street. The rumor that your secrets are never safe. The promise that your name will end up inked on a page when you least expect it. Alice knows this too. She watches Mistress Rose sometimes from the shadows near the hearth. The way her eyes flick to the girls like she's counting ribs, measuring worth by how thin the hunger has carved their hips. Yet, here's the piece no one says out loud. For all her sharpness, for all the secrets tucked under her pillow, Mistress Rose keeps them alive. She pays the guards who'd rather drag them to the whipping post. She bribes the priest who might preach hellfire when the taxes run dry. She keeps the hearth burning, the straw pallets dry, the walls thick enough to hush the cries. Is it kindness? Not quite. Kindness doesn't count the coins in your palm before it lets you eat. But it's something. A scrap of warmth Alice clings to when the frost slips under her cloak, when the bruises bloom purple under her chemise. And you, lying warm, tucked in the hush of your room, you can almost see Mistress Rose's silhouette in the loft window. The way she presses her hand to the ledgers, eyes half closed, lips moving in a prayer she doesn't believe will save her soul. Because a soul, once sold so many times, never really comes home again. So tonight, close your eyes knowing there's always someone behind the door, counting every secret you'd rather bury. But your door is locked. Your secret sleeps soundly under your pillow, untouched by ledgers and rusty keys. Next, we'll drift back to the corners, to the tiny luxuries that slip like silk ribbons through their fingers, sweet scraps of comfort in a world that never stays warm for long. But for now, feel the hush. Mistress Rose watches the alley. Alice hums in her sleep. And you rest easy. Picture this. Alice standing at the market stall just after the rain. The street is a puddle of reflections. Crooked rooftops shimmering on the cobblestones. Lanterns flickering where the sun refuses to shine. Her cloak is thin enough that the damp seeps through to her bones, but she stands there anyway, eyes wide at the scraps of velvet folded neat under the peddler's hand. It's funny, isn't it? How, when you have nothing, the smallest softness feels like the whole world turned kind for a moment. She doesn't have enough coin for velvet. Not really. But the peddler, a man with a crooked grin and breath that smells like pipe smoke, knows her name, or the name she gives him, anyway. Sometimes he'll press a tiny scrap of ribbon into her palm when no one's looking. A scrap too short for a good wife's bonnet, but long enough to tie around her wrist, hidden under her sleeve. A secret softness brushing her pulse each time her heart reminds her she's alive. Back at the Rose and Thorn, the girls hoard these little luxuries like squirrels hiding nuts before the frost. Marjorie keeps a single gold button she found under the hearthstones. She swears it fell from some lord's cuff when he staggered out too drunk to remember. She rubs it between her thumb and forefinger before she sleeps, like a talisman that says she's worth more than the cold straw beneath her ribs. Another girl, the one with the milk blonde hair, once stole a piece of honeycomb from the madam's pantry. She hid it under her pallet, biting tiny pieces off in the hush before dawn while the others slept. You'd think sweetness would rot in a place like this, but it tasted of summer fields, of bee hum and warm sunlight on bare skin. She told Alice once that every bite made her feel like her mother's hands were braiding her hair again, gentle and slow. Alice's favorite treasure is a piece of rose-scented soap, too small to wash away the filth entirely, but enough to rub between her palms after a long night, to catch that fleeting ghost of petals when she lifts her hands to her nose. The madam lets them buy scraps from the merchant's wife, the bits that break when the soap mold cracks. Cheap enough that the ledgers don't cry about it. Expensive enough that each sliver feels like a rebellion against the stench of old ale and sweat. Sometimes they share. Imagine it. For girls perched around the cracked basin, giggling like children as they lather each other's arms, scrubbing away what no vinegar or tallow could ever truly hide. Alice watches the soap bubble in the icy water. Rainbow sheen swirling like a promise she never says out loud. And clothes? Oh, the scraps of silk that pass through these rooms. Once in a while, a generous customer leaves behind a handkerchief embroidered with initials that don't belong in this place. A girl tucks it into her bodice, lets it brush her heart all night, imagining the warmth of the house it came from. The clean bed, the wife who will wonder where her fine linen went while she dabs her lips with another. It's never much. A scrap here, a drop there. Alice presses a piece of dried lavender into the hem of her cloak. The smell, so faint now, she has to close her eyes and breathe deep just to remember. She dreams of more. A comb made of bone instead of splintering wood. A pot of salve for the sores she scratches in her sleep. A pair of leather shoes without holes in the sole. But the corner doesn't pay in luxuries, so she hoards what she can. A drop of rose oil dab behind her ears when she leans into a customer's throat. A velvet ribbon tied once around her braid. She unties it just before she steps back on a street, tucks it inside her cloak where no eyes can see. Funny how the softness keeps them sharp. The bruises don't fade because of a scrap of soap. The hunger doesn't quiet because of honey on the tongue. But the taste of sweetness, the slip of velvet against raw skin, it reminds them they're still human, not just beasts in the alley with rats for company. And Mistress Rose knows this too. She lets them have it, in small doses, a kindness that costs nothing when you count every coin that passes through your hands. A bribe? Maybe, or a balm. A way to keep the girls soft enough to smile, but hungry enough to come crawling back when a lavender runs out. So picture Alice tonight, curled on her pallet, the rose-scented soap wrapped in linen under her cheek like a lover's gift. She closes her eyes, breathes in the faint ghost of flowers that never grew in the gutter, and for a heartbeat, the lashes fade, the corners soften, the filth slips away, and you, warm under your blankets, your pillow soft under your cheek. You can almost smell it, can't you? That hint of sweetness in a world that never truly wanted these girls to taste it. So tonight, hold your little luxuries closer. The warmth of your sheets, the clean scent of your skin, the softness you never had to barter for. Next, we'll slip back through the town square, into the fickle tangle of rules and taxes, the shifting sand where law pretends it can tame a corner that's never stayed quiet for long. But for now, breathe in that faint ghost of rose. Feel the softness of your pillow, and drift. Next, imagine the town square again. Not the way it looks at dawn, wash pale and hushed, but the way it feels at midday, when the bailiff's boots scuff the stones and the ink dries thick on crumbling parchments nailed to the church door. See the notice flapping in the wind? A new ordinance, fresh from the bishop's quill, all loops and flourishes that look prettier than the punishment they promise. It says the brothels will be taxed double come winter, that any girl caught hawking her wares outside the proper houses will lose her tongue, or her ears, or her place in the world altogether. It's a threat dressed up in holy ink. But it's a lie too. Everyone knows it. Because the same men who tack the parchment to the door are the same men who slip through the back gates of the Rose and Thorn when dusk comes low and the wine's gone to their heads. Picture Mistress Rose standing by the door when the bailiff comes round. His cloak is heavy with the town's crest, but his eyes slip right to the lockbox at her hip. She lifts the lid just enough for him to glimpse the coins stacked neat inside. A hush offering. A tax paid before the ink has even dried on the decree. She knows exactly how many silver pieces it takes to keep the law looking the other way. And she knows, too, that if the coffers run dry, the law will turn its sharpest teeth on the girls first. Not the ones who collect the coins, but the ones who earn them with the bruises on their thighs. Alice watches all this from the corner, half hidden behind the cracked tavern door. She's learned to read. Not the holy book, not the pretty poems carved into church pillars, but the signs the street writes in half-truths and shrugs. She knows that every rule has a loophole if your secrets run deep enough. The corner is banned? Fine. Slip into the alley behind the tanner's yard, where the stink of hides keeps the guards away. The bishop's men patrol the main road. Better to knock twice on the cellar door at the Rose and Thorn, duck your head, and let Mistress Rose barter the night away while your shoes stay clean for once. Sometimes the law does clamp its jaws shut. A raid at dawn, the whip snapping over bared backs, a girl thrown into the stocks, her wrists raw where the ropes bite. But even then, the loopholes bloom back the next night, softer than before, more hidden, like weeds pushing up between flagstones no boot can grind flat forever. And funny, too, how the church plays both judge and banker. Alice has heard it, the whispers that slip between the pews after Mass, that for the right coin, a sin can be washed away with a sip of holy wine and the murmur of Latin words no girl like her will ever understand. Picture the bishop's scribe, cool scratching slow in the candlelight. He marks down the tithes, the fines, the hush money that trickles in copper by copper from brothel doors to cathedral coffers. He doesn't ask where the silver comes from. The bruises that minted it aren't his to bear. And when the ledger grows too heavy with debts no girl can pay, they slip the paper under Mistress Rose's door at dusk. A name, a samode, a promise that if she can't pay up by the next moon, the girls will find themselves lashed to the post again, not for their sins, but for the unpaid price of survival. So Alice learns to bend the rules until they crack. She learns which guard likes his purse fat and his conscience thin. She learns which alley stays dark enough to keep her hidden from the bailiff's boots. She learns that sometimes a loaf of bread, pressed into the hand of the bishop's cook, means the difference between a raid tonight and an empty square tomorrow. It's a crooked dance, one she never stops moving through. One hand pressed to the corner wall, the other to the loophole that promises she'll stand tomorrow, bruises and all. And you, lying warm, your world drawn with lines that don't bend so easily. You can almost feel the sharp edge of that inked parchment, can't you? The cold threat that flaps in the wind. The hush money that buys a night of warmth while the law pretends to look away. So tonight, rest easy knowing your rules don't bite so hard. No ledger waits for your name at the church door. No guard watches your every step to see if your skirt swings too wide in the shadows. Alice will stand under that parchment tomorrow, lips cracked but eyes sharp, one coin tucked away for the next loophole, the next hush. Next, we'll slip into the quiet place where the girls mourn each other. The hush of funerals no bell tolls for, the lost ones who slip through the cracks when the loopholes close tight. But for now, breathe easy. The parchment stays nailed to the door. The corner hums quiet, and your world stays soft. Sleep, my friend. Sleep while you can. Next, imagine the churchyard at dawn, the fog clinging to the crooked fence like the hem of a widow's veil. No sunlight yet, just that gray hush that makes every stone look softer than it should. Beneath those stones, names fade faster than the moss can remember them. But not all who lie here get stoned. Picture Alice standing near the wall, her arms wrapped around her thin cloak, the frost biting through her worn shoes. Beside her, Marjorie shift from foot to foot, lips chapped, eyes darting toward the church door, hoping the priest won't come out. He won't. Not for this. They all know it. It's a girl they're here for. Not a saint. Not a good wife who left behind a husband to wail and toss flowers on her grave. Just another corner girl. Hair tangled with old lice, belly too empty for too long. Or maybe it was the fever that took her, or the lashes that split skin deeper than anyone bothered to stitch. The how doesn't matter now. The when is enough. Before dawn, while the rest of the town slept, she slipped out of the story. Mistress Rose stands a few paces back, eyes dry as old parchment. She doesn't hold a candle or a rosary. She holds a small purse instead. Coins she'll press into the sexton's palm when the hole is covered. A bribe to keep the grave just deep enough that the dogs won't dig it open when the moon is fat. No bell tolls. No hums through the mist. Alice wishes she remembered the words her mother used to whisper at burials. But all that's left now is a tune, a faint echo that quivers on her tongue when she tries to hum it. So she doesn't. She just stands there, breath clouding the air, eyes stinging more from the cold than the loss. Because here's the thing, grief costs more than they have to give. You mourn too loudly, you end up next in the ground, or worse, tied to the post for drawing too much pity when the church is short on silver. So they stand quiet. Marjorie drops a wilted sprig of rosemary onto the frozen dirt. Alice tucks her lavender scrap deeper in her pocket. She thought about leaving it, but it's all she has. Better to keep the sweetness for the living. The sexton works quick, boots crunching over old leaves as he shovels the earth back in place. No one speaks while he works. There's something about the sound of dirt hitting a thin wooden box that closes the throat tight. It sounds final, even when nothing ever is. When the last spadeful falls, Mistress Rose presses the purse in his palm, nods once. She doesn't thank him. Gratitude is another coin they can't afford. They turn to leave, feet slipping on the frosted grass, shoulders hunched against the morning chill. No one looks back. They've learned not to. In the days that follow, the girls will whisper the dead girl's name a few times, soft like a lullaby that gets stuck behind the teeth. They'll tell stories, small ones, that she once sang so sweet the drunkest guard would hush just to hear her hum, that she kept her soap tucked inside her bodice, even on the corner, so she'd smell of something better than stale sweat. And then, slowly, the stories will fade. The corner doesn't pause long for the dead. There's rent to pay, bread to beg for, secrets to sell before the sores come and take another girl down. Sometimes Alice wonders who will stand at her unmarked grave. If Marjorie will hum her tune for her. If Mistress Rose will count out a purse and press it into a dirt-caked palm to keep the dogs at bay. She doesn't dwell on it too long. Grief is a luxury, like soap, like honey, like the warm weight of a clean bed. Instead, she presses her lavender scrap to her lips that night, hums the half-remembered lullaby with her eyes squeezed tight. And you, lying there, your blankets warm, your name's safe on papers and stones. You can almost feel it, can't you? That chill that settles under the skin when no bell rings for you. The hush that hums when the world pretends it never saw you at all. So tonight, say a name, any name. Hold it for the ones who never got to keep theirs. Let your warmth be the softness they never felt under frostbitten grass. Next, we'll drift into the half-magic of old charms and whispered cures. The potions and powders they traded when hope was all they had left. But for now, let the fog roll back. Let the graveyard fade behind your eyelids. Sleep soft. You're still here. Next, imagine Alice huddled in the corner of the alehouse kitchen after a long, cold night. Her breath ghosts in the chill air. The hearth nothing but embers now, too precious to waste on the likes of her when the pot's not bubbling for paying customers. Her back aches, the raw welt from the lash pulling tight when she shifts her shoulders. The cough rattles in her ribs again, sharp and wet. She spits into the ash near the hearth, watches a thread of red vanish into the gray. The madam doesn't believe in folk cures, says they're a waste of good coin when there's vinegar to scrub a sore and a prayer to mumble if you're desperate enough. But Alice knows better. Sometimes hope is worth more than bread. Picture the old woman who sits at the edge of the market square. Her stall a crooked table cluttered with sprigs of dried sage, roots knotted like clenched fists, bottles filled with cloudy liquids that catch the sunlight just right so they look like gold. They call her Mother Bridget, though no one's sure if that's her name or just the name she stole from some saint to make her trade look more holy than it is. Her hands are gnarled, brown with age and dirt that no soap could ever scrub clean. Her smile, a thin line that creases deep when she tucks a coin into her sleeve. Alice drifts to her stall in the hush before the guard wakes. She stands there, fingers cold, eyes tracing the bundles of herbs hanging from the makeshift beam above Mother Bridget's head. Wormwood for the cough, mugwort for the sores, a scrap of rowan tied to her wrist to keep the pox from blooming under the skin. Got coin, Mother Bridget rasps, eyes bright as a crow's. Alice nods. She saved 2 copper pennies, tucked under the loose floorboard by her pallet where even Marjorie's envy can't sniff them out. The old woman measures out a pinch of dried petals, wraps them in wax cloth. Steep this in wine, she says. Drink before you lie with him. Or after. Or both. If it works, you'll keep your belly flat. Alice tucks it deep in her pocket, the cloth warm from the old woman's palm. She doesn't ask what happens if it doesn't work. They both know there's no good answer to that. Mother Bridget leans closer. For the sores? Alice nods again. A tiny bottle appears, green glass, cork tight, the liquid inside thick and yellowish. It'll burn like sin, the old woman says, her laugh a dry crackle. But better to burn now than rot later. She trades the last penny for it. When she slips it into her cloak, she feels lighter. Not because she's healed, but because the lie of hope is sometimes softer than the truth of the lash. Back at the Rose and Thorn, the other girls peek into her pockets. Marjorie huffs. Witch's piss, that is, she says. But later that night, she'll slip down to Mother Bridget's stall too. They all do, sooner or later. Picture them in the loft before dawn, the hush broken only by the clink of glass as they pass a vile hand to hand. A smear of thick salve pressed onto a sore thigh. A sprig of sage tucked into a bodice, to make the men believe they're cleaner than they are. Sometimes they whisper charms as they work, half-remembered prayers twisted with curses. Saint Agnes, keep the fever from my bed. Saint Margaret, keep the child from my belly. Holy words tangled with old pagan scraps their mothers taught them in dark cottages before the streets swallowed them whole. Does it work? Sometimes. Sometimes the sore closes. Sometimes the belly stays flat. But the cough comes anyway. The fever blooms under the skin, bright and terrible, no matter how many petals you steep in sour wine. Yet the girls keep buying, keep believing, because believing costs less than giving up. And Mistress Rose, sharp-eyed behind her ledger, never stops them. She knows what hope can do when the walls press too close, when the corners bite too hard. Better to let the girls rub lavender oil into their sores, tie rowan twigs around their wrists, breathe a little easier for a night or two. So tonight, picture Alice kneeling by the cracked basin. She uncorks the bottle, dabs a smear onto the raw patch on her inner thigh. It stings like fire, tears springing hot to her eyes, but she bites her lip to keep from waking the others. She hums her lullaby under her breath. That same broken melody, a charm older than saints, older than stone churches that pretend they own salvation. And you, warm under your blankets, your breath clean, your skin whole, you can almost taste that bitterness, can't you? The lie that feels better than nothing at all. So tonight, hold your own hope close. It costs you nothing here. No copper pennies slipped into a crooked hand. No charm whispered in the dark. Next, we'll slip into the thin thread of dreams that kept them standing. The visions of escape, of soft fields and cottages that never came. But for now, breathe deep. Let the old cures sleep under your tongue. Drift easy. Alice is humming her charm for you too. Next, picture Alice curled on her straw pallet in the hour just before the street lamps sputter out. The last drunk has stumbled home. The madam's keys clink a final time against the ledger chest. Somewhere beyond the thin loft wall, the town exhales its chill breath, a sigh of gutters and frost and secrets that never really sleep. Alice drags the blanket up to her chin, though it barely reaches her shoulders. She slides her palm under her cheek, fingers brushing the tiny lavender scrap she keeps hidden there. It doesn't smell like much anymore, more dust than sweetness, but tonight it's enough. Because tonight she lets herself drift, lets the bruises loosen their grip for a heartbeat or two. Dreams, you see, are cheap here, cheaper than bread, more filling than the watery ale they drink to hush their hunger. Every girl in the rows, and Thorn carries one in her pocket, stitched inside the seams of her cloak, woven into the lullaby she hums when the darkness presses too close. Marjorie dreams of a kitchen with warm bread and a door that locks from the inside. She tells Alice, in the hush between coughing fits, how she'd stand by the hearth kneading dough, her skirts clean for once, no man's hands at her waist unless she asked for it. She says her mother taught her how to bake once, says she still remembers the way yeast smells when it blooms under a cloth. Another girl, the one with the milk blonde hair, dreams of a green field behind a cottage that never had fleas. She says she'd keep chickens there, fat and clucking, lay in the grass while the sun painted her skin gold. No corners, no whipping post, just the soft hum of bees and the creak of a gate she can close whenever the world comes knocking too loud. And Alice? She dreams small, not because she wants less, but because the corners have taught her that small dreams are harder to ruin. She dreams of shoes that keep out the wet, of soap that never runs out, that makes her smell like roses even when the sores bloom along her thighs. She dreams of a bed that stays hers from dusk to dawn, not a pallet shared with fleas and coughs and the restless shuffling of other bodies desperate to believe they're still warm inside. Sometimes, when the dream is soft enough, she lets it grow teeth. She pictures the merchant again, the one with the boots that didn't leave muddy tracks on the floor, the one who pressed his lips to her palm like it was a relic worth saving. In the dream, he comes back, his cloak heavy with rain, his coin purse heavier still. He lifts her onto the horse waiting at the alley's end, its flanks steaming in the cold, eyes soft as velvet. They ride through the crooked lanes before the church bell tolls for the constable's boots. Past the square where the post stands empty for once. Past the fields stitched with stone walls and scarecrows who never learned how to look away. They stop at a cottage Alice can almost remember, a dream house built from the scraps of other people's stories. A fire crackles in the hearth. A loaf of bread sits on the table, still warm, butter pooling into its cracks. No madam at the door. No ledger with her name scratched in angry lines. No cough rattling in her chest. She slips her shoes off. Real shoes, whole soles, no holes to let the frost in. She stands on the hearthstones, toes curling in the warmth, the lavender scent filling every corner of her lungs until she feels whole enough to forget where she came from. But here's the cruel sweetness. The dream always cracks at the edges. The horse shudders into a rat scratching under her pallet. The merchant's cloak twists into the corner of a rough blanket that smells of stale ale and damp straw. She opens her eyes. The loft is still dark. Marjorie snores, her feet pushing Alice's knee through the thin blanket. A drop of cold leaks through the rafters, landing soft on her cheek. She doesn't cry, not for the dream, not for the loss of it, because even the broken pieces are worth holding on to. Tomorrow, when the street corner bites her raw again, when the constable's boots splash mud on her hem, when Mistress Rose counts out the silver with fingers that never tremble, she'll keep that field behind her eyes, that sliver of warm bread on her tongue. Funny, isn't it? How a dream can weigh nothing in your palm and yet feel heavier than any coin you ever earned. So tonight, you, safe in your bed, your soft pillow holding secrets that never cost you blood, you can almost see it too. That cottage flickering like a candle at the edge of the dark. The clean sheets, the buttered bread, the door that never cracks open for hands you don't want. Hold a moment. Let it settle in your chest. Taste the sweetness Alice can't keep when the morning comes. Next, we'll drift back through the gutter where betrayal waits. The friends who turn, the deals that sour, the soft alliances that bite you from behind. But for now, let the cottage stand a little longer. Let the lavender cling to the air. Sleep, sweet one. Alice is dreaming for you too. Next, picture the alley behind the rose and thorn at dusk. Not quite dark enough to hide the bruises, but dim enough that the eyes watching from cracked shutters pretend they see nothing at all. Alice stands with her back to the damp brick, cloak tugged tight around her shoulders. One hand pressed to her pocket where her last copper coin hides, warm from her palm. She's waiting, but not for a man tonight. She's waiting for Marjorie. Funny how survival can twist two girls together, rivals by day, sisters by night, both with their ears tuned to the hush of footsteps that might mean a coin or a cudgel, a promise or a blade. Marjorie was the one who taught Alice how to slip a silver piece past Mistress Rose's tally, a trick so small it almost feels harmless when your belly's empty enough. She showed her the hidden drain where the guard will look the other way for half a crust of bread and a kiss behind the barrels. They share secrets the way other girls share lice combs. Sharp, necessary, passed hand to hand in the hush when the walls feel like they're listening. But here's the thing about secrets. They're worth more than trust. Imagine Marjorie now, her cloak pulled low over her tangled hair, eyes darting up the alley, as she slips closer to Alice. She smiles, but the smile doesn't reach her eyes. Her teeth flash white in the dim light, and Alice feels that prickle under her skin, the one that says run, but there's nowhere to run to. Got it, Marjorie whispers. Alice nods, pressing the copper coin into her palm. It's meant for the guard, the one who turns his back when they slip out the back gate after curfew. 1 copper for safety. 1 copper to keep the lash away for another night. But tonight, Marjorie's hand curls around Alice's wrist too tight. Change my mind, she breathes, voice sweet as poison. You're not going. Alice tries to pull back, but Marjorie's nails bite down, sharp crescents that will leave marks no man will pay extra for. The guard's asking questions, she hisses. Says someone's been skimming the madam's purse. Says he wants a name. Alice's stomach twists. She wants a laugh. Of course someone's been skimming. We all do it, you taught me. But the words choke behind her teeth. Marjorie leans closer. Her breath smells of stale ale and the honey she stole from the kitchen when Mistress Rose wasn't looking. She whispers it's soft as a lover's promise. I gave him yours. He'll take you at dawn. The coin clinks to the ground between them, dull, dirty, rolling until it wedges into a crack in the stones. Neither of them picks it up. Alice feels the night folding around her shoulders, heavier than the cloak. She could shout. She could run to Mistress Rose, confess first, trade Marjorie's name for her own. But she knows, she's seen it too many times, that the quickest blade is always the one closest to your ribs. Marjorie's fingers slip away. She steps back, smoothing her cloak like nothing happened. She hums the same lullaby they once whispered together in the loft, voices shaking as they press their feet together for warmth. Funny, isn't it? How betrayal sounds like a lullaby when you're desperate enough. Tomorrow, the guard will drag Alice to the post, tie her wrists raw against the splintered wood. Mistress Rose will stand by the ledger, lips pursed, eyes flat as pond ice. She'll shake her head just once, and the lash will answer the rest. But tonight, Alice stands in the alley, her breath ghosting in the cold air, the copper coin lost somewhere between the stones. She presses her palm to her chest, feels the faint beat there, stubborn and slow, the same drum that's carried her through worse. She turns, slips back into the shadows behind the tavern, each step soft as a prayer she doesn't believe in anymore. She'll find another way. She always does. In the loft, Marjorie will curl on her palate, the taste of honey sweet on her tongue. She'll close her eyes to the frost creeping under the shutters, dream of the kitchen she swears she'll own one day. And in the hush before dawn, she'll hum that lullaby again, softer now, like an apology that never leaves her lips. And you, warm in your bed, no one waiting to slip your secrets into another man's pocket. You can almost feel it, can't you? That cold twist between the ribs. The hush of footsteps that say you trusted too much. The lullaby that tastes like honey and lies all at once. So tonight, hold your own truths close. No hands reaching for them in the dark. No betrayal biting at your edges. Next, we'll slip back through the back door, where the girls learn to sharpen their own blades. The tiny rebellions that keep them standing when the world wants them broken. But for now, close your eyes. Let Marjorie's lullaby fade down the alley. Sleep soft. Your secrets are safe here. Next, imagine the back corridor of the Rose and Thorn. That thin passageway behind the kitchen, damp with spilled ale, mouse droppings tucked into the cracks between the floorboards. Alice stands there barefoot, her toes numb against the stone. She presses her palm to the wall where a candle stub flickers low, its flame tiny, but stubborn as a heartbeat. You'd think rebellion in a place like this would be loud. A knife in the dark, a fire set to the madam's ledger, a guard's throat cut in an alley. But that's not how girls like Alice survive. Big rebellions get you whipped, drowned, buried with no stone to say you ever breathed at all. So they choose the quiet ones. Picture Alice slipping her fingers into the madam's storeroom. Not to steal the silver outright. That would be foolish. But to lift a scrap of soap no one will miss until the ledgers come up short a penny or two. She wraps it in a rag, tucks it deep into her cloak. At dawn, she'll press that soap into the palm of the girl coughing blood onto her pillow, the one too weak to stand at the corner now. It won't save her, but it'll make her smell sweet for a night. A softness that says, I see you still human. Or think of Marjorie, before the betrayal curdled her heart. The way she once poured lamp oil into the basin of the guard who pressed too close when he thought no one watched. He woke the next morning to find his boots burned to ash. The sole's gone, the leather curled black. A warning he'd never prove. A bruise on his pride that kept his hands off the girl's waist for a month or two. Sometimes rebellion hums under the skin like a fever you can't sweat out. Alice holds it in the arch of her foot when she stands too close to the constable's boots. Daring him to notice her smile is just a mask. She keeps it in the way she bites her tongue when Mistress Rose clicks her teeth over the missing pennies. She knows the madam's secrets. After all, the names in that second ledger under her pillow, the hush money that greases the bishop's palms. She could speak if she wanted to, but she knows the game. The words would break her bones before they ever reach the church door. So instead, she keeps them tucked behind her teeth like a blade she'll draw only if the rope's already around her neck. Picture the girls in the loft after dusk. The lamp burned low, so their shadows dance across the beams like ghosts too stubborn to leave. Marjorie passes a piece of stale bread to the girl who spent her last coin on vinegar for her sores. They sit knee to knee, shoulders pressed close, whispering all the petty rebellions they've seen. They laugh, soft and breathless. The kind of laugh you bite back before it cracks into a sob. It's enough, sometimes, to remember they still have the choice to fight, even if the world never hears the clang of the blade. And then there are the hidden words they scratch into the tavern's back wall. Tiny etchings under the shelves where no one looks. Names mostly. A mark that says, I was here. I survived one more night. Sometimes a curse, a prayer, turned upside down. May the fleas keep you company, dear constable. May the bishop's wine turn a bile on his tongue. Little rebellions, so small they'd blow away if you sneeze too hard. But they bind the girls together in a hush stronger than any law, any rope, any lash that wants to split them open and leave them raw for the rats. Tomorrow, they'll stand on the corner again, bruises hidden under scraps of silk, lullabies humming low under their breath. They'll bend when they have to, bow their heads when the boots come stomping. But that tiny flame, the stolen soap, the burnt boots, the secret curses carved into rotting wood, that's theirs. Funny, isn't it? How sometimes survival tastes like spite, like a splinter you press under someone else's skin just so you remember the world hasn't swallowed you whole. So tonight, you warm under your covers, your secret safe, your name never carved into a tavern wall. You can almost feel it, can't you? That ember tucked under the ribs, daring the dark to snuff it out. Hold it close. The world is softer for you. But we both know there's something sweet about knowing you'd spit back at the boots too, if you had to. Next, we'll slip back to the hush of what they hoped for in the end. The soft truth that even the fiercest rebellion sometimes curls up into forgiveness, or at least the hope of it. But for now, let your ember glow steady. No constable's boot to stamp it out here. No madam's ledger to tally it up. Sleep easy, friend. Alice's rebellion hums for you too. Next, picture the loft just before dawn. The air heavy with the stale sweetness of rose soap scraps and vinegar. The other girls shift under rough blankets, their breathing ragged with coughs that don't hush even for the sleep they've fought so hard to keep. Alice lies on her back, eyes tracing the splintered beams above her. The frost finds its way through every gap, tiny crystals blooming along the edge of her blanket like a cruel embroidery. She hums her lullaby, lips moving without a sound, the tune almost lost now but stitched tight into her bones. You'd think there'd be no room left for forgiveness here. Not in a place where betrayal curls behind every shoulder, where secrets slip through the floorboards like rain down a drain pipe. Yet, forgiveness grows into cracks no one bothers to sweep clean. Picture Marjorie now, lying 2 pallets over. Alice can hear her breathing, shallow, a wheeze that catches at the edge like a blade being drawn too slow. The copper coin she lost in the alley glimmers behind her eyelids each time she tries to sleep. She could have spat Marjorie's name to Mistress Rose by now. Could have bartered that betrayal for her own chance to stand a few more nights without the rope. But she doesn't, because here's the truth no one writes in the ledgers. When the world wants you bent low enough to break, sometimes the softest mercy is the sharpest rebellion. She remembers the nights Marjorie pressed her feet against hers under the blanket, skin to skin, warmth stolen from each other when the frost was meaner than the lash. She remembers the time Marjorie rubbed onion poultice onto the boil at her hip, ignoring the stink because it might draw out the rot before the fever set in. She remembers the giggle that bloomed between them when they whispered that someday they'd run far enough to sleep under the same blanket without rats to keep them company. So tonight, Alice hums that half-forgotten tune for Marjorie too. Not because she's foolish enough to trust again, but because bitterness makes your bones heavy and she's tired of carrying so much weight. Imagine this. Alice crawls over the splintered floor, blanket pulled tight around her shoulders like a cloak. She kneels by Marjorie's pallet, fingers brushing her wrist, a pulse there, stubborn, faint. In the hush before the bells call the fishmongers to the river, she slips the last scrap of lavender from her own pocket into Marjorie's hand. A truce, not forever, maybe not even until tomorrow, but for this breath, this heartbeat, this scrap of warmth. She doesn't wake her, doesn't whisper any sweet words. The world here has no appetite for forgiveness dressed in lace and silk. It wants it raw, like the frost that bites your skin awake. Alice slips back to her pallet before the madam's footsteps tap on the stairs. She pulls the blanket up to her chin, eyes heavy, the tune drifting through her ribs like smoke through broken rafters. Funny, isn't it? How forgiveness here doesn't look like prayers muttered over pews or confessions hissed through the confessional grate. It's a cough hushed by a gentle palm, a crust of bread tucked under a blanket, a bruise not pointed out to the constable when the ledgers light on silver. Tomorrow, they'll stand in the same corner again. Maybe Marjorie's eyes will dart like knives when they catch Alice's. Maybe they'll share the same ratty scarf when the wind claws down the alley. Maybe the forgiveness will wear thin again, brittle as frost. But tonight, it lives, fragile, stubborn, warm as a ghost pressed to the back of your throat. And you, safe in your clean bed, your door bolted against the cold. You can almost feel it, can't you? That hush that hums through the ribs when you choose to let the blade drop. The soft ache that says, I see you, I know you, and I'm letting you stand one more dawn. So tonight, hold your own forgiveness close. For the ones who bruise you without knowing how deep it would go. For the cracks in your own ribs that never quite mended smooth. Next, we'll drift into the final hush. The closing breath that leaves us staring at the street as dawn breaks. The corner waiting, the girls standing side by side like shadows stitched to the stones. But for now, rest your palm on your chest. Feel the heartbeat, stubborn, soft, forgiven. Sleep. Alice is humming you there. Next, imagine the first hint of dawn creeping through the crooked eaves of the rose and thorn. The loft breathes out a single cloud of warmth. The stale perfume of too many bodies pressed shoulder to shoulder through a night that asked too much and gave back too little. Alice stirs on her pallet. The blanket slips from her shoulder, the raw chill crawling in like an uninvited guest. Her bones ache where old bruises hum, not with the sharp bite of fresh lashes, but the dull throb of a body that has stood too long, bent too far, but not broken yet. Somewhere down below, the madam's keys rattle like wind chimes made of iron and threads. The hearth flickers back to life, not with a roaring flame, but with the stubborn glow of coals fed just enough scraps of kindling to warm the pot of weak broth she'll dole out by the ladle. The other girls rouse themselves like cats stretched too thin. Marjorie pulls the lavender scrap Alice tucked in her hand deeper under her chin. She won't say thank you. Words cost more than scraps in the morning. But her breath settles, softer now, her shoulders a little less sharp under the frayed blanket. One by one, they rise, hair tangled, skirts patched, so many times the cloth is more seam than fabric. They lean over the cracked basin, splash icy water on his skin still stinging from last night's bruises. A bar of rose soap, whittled to a nub, passes from palm to palm like a relic. It foams thin and watery, but it's enough to chase away the worst of the filth. Mistress Rose stands by the stairwell, ledger tucked under one arm, the other hand drumming her keys against her hip. She watches them without a word, eyes sharp, mouth a thin line that never quite remembers how to smile. She'll mark each name, each coin owed, each secret that weighs more than silver in this house of hushed sins. Outside, the street rouses too. Boots splash through the gutter's black slurry. Shutters creak open as good wives lean out, faces pinched against the stink. They watch the corner girls shuffle out like shades, skirts hitched above the muck, feet wrapped in rags where shoes gave up the fight 2 winters ago. Alice steps out last, cloak wrapped tight around her shoulders. The frost cracks under her worn soles, but the sky overhead blushes soft with dawn, pale pink spreading like milk in weak tea. She lifts her eyes to it, just a second to remember there's more above her than stone walls and the constable's boots. Marjorie shuffles up beside her, elbow bumping hers. A flicker of a truce passes between them, brittle as frost, stubborn as hope. They won't speak of last night, the betrayal, the forgiveness, the lavender scrap. Some things stay folded in the dark where no man's coins can buy them. They take their place at the corner where the tavern wall shields them from the worst of the wind. Alice curls her fingers around the edge of her cloak, thumb brushing the lavender sprig she keeps pressed to her ribs. She hums her tune, low and steady, the lullaby her mother sang before the lash, before the ledger, before the corner carved her into something that looks like survival. She glances at Marjorie, a quick tilt of the chin, a question without words. Marjorie shrugs, mouth twitching at the corner like she might laugh or spit or both. But she hums too, the same broken tune, carried down the street like a secret the world forgot how to listen to. The town square comes alive around them. Fishwives arguing over the price of slimy eels, ragged boys chasing rats for halfpennies, a priest stepping quick through the mud, robes hoisted above his boots, eyes fixed anywhere but on the corner girls who stand like ghosts made of bruises and lullabies. Somewhere behind them, the whip waits. The ledger waits. The graveyard behind the crooked church fence waits too. Holes just shallow enough that the dogs can dig if the hush money runs out. And yet, Alice stands. So does Marjorie. So do all the others, huddled against the wind that snatches at their skirts, humming soft under their breath. Tiny flames too stubborn to be snuffed out by the frost or the lash or the bishop's crooked quill. Funny, isn't it? How the world never sees them. Yet it takes everything from them just the same. And still they stand. And you, warm under your blankets, your breath soft against the pillow. You can almost hear it, can't you? That fragile hum in the cold. That heartbeat that says survive. Stand. Sing the lullaby for one more dawn. So tonight, or rather, this morning, as the frost creeps past the window, you can close with a flick of your hand. Hold them close in the hush behind your eyes. They're still there, on that corner, cloak pulled tight, lavender pressed to the ribs, song stitched into the bone. The world was brutal, but they stood. And somehow, so do you. Now breathe deep. The street will keep turning. The ledgers will keep scratching. But the lullaby will hum you to sleep or to waking, knowing there are small flames flickering in every cold place you've ever feared. Rest now. You've traveled far. The corner hums behind your closed eyes, but here, your feet stay warm. Sleep well, dream soft, stand strong. And if you ever need to drift back to the corner, you know where to find me. Right here, humming the tune Alice never forgot.